last group we talked about what addiction was, and we didn't really get anywhere. There's no, and that's the point with this whole thing is like, there's no definite answer. There's no like, this is what addiction is. It's not just environmental. It's not just genetic. It's not just your peer group. It's not just parenting. It's none of those things. It's like epigenetics. It's very complicated gene environment interactions. But again, it no matter the origin of your addiction, it usually manifests itself in the same way. It's like we chronically use drugs and we can't stop drinking type thing. So then it becomes like, and again, then what is the solution? Because the solution is also hard to figure out. So far, there's a lot of really good recovery programs. Cognitive behavioral therapy has proven to be insanely good for addiction rehab. Now, it's not as good as AA. AA seems to be the best. And I don't really know why that is particularly. It might just be because it's been around for so long and it's such an established community. But you know what? It makes me think of a guy named Jack Panksepp, who wrote a book called Effective Neuroscience, and it was the neuroscience of affect or emotions, if you will, and he was trying to,
Is that like the laser therapy kind of thing, or what?
No, but that sounds awesome. I would rather just get lasered and then not be a drug addict anymore. That'd be awesome.
It's like little lasers that you put on your ears or some shit.
No, I don't know what that is. In like psychology, when you're talking about an affect, what that is it's like it's a feeling. So it's like when your stomach rumbles and you're hungry, that's an affect, right? It's like that's the affect of hunger. And so what he was doing, he was trying to figure out what emotions are, which is not settled science. Like that, no one, even the definition of what an emotion is. Like there's the James Lang theory of emotion. Lisa Feldman Barrett has her own weird theory of emotion, where it's like you perceive stuff, then your body reacts, and then your brain tries to guess based on your body's reaction what emotions you're experiencing, and then you actually create the emotion based on like there's all these weird theories. But Jack Panksepp has a very interesting one. So he basically was looking at brain circuitry. He's a neuroscientist, and he kind of boiled it down to there's 7 different emotional generation systems, and there's the care system, there's the play system. Jack Panksepp's the guy who discovered that rats laugh. He tickled them with an eraser, and they're like, squeak, squeak, and they make little squeaky noises, and they're actually laughing. But he discovered play circuitry in mammals, and then there was also the fear system, there was the grief panic system, there was the rage system, which is like defensive aggression and resource acquisition orientated, and the seeking system, and there was one other. But in it, I watched a lecture of his, and he is a very, very, very strong advocate of the AA recovery program. Very strong advocate, but not for the reasons that AA says. AA says AA works because God, right? There's a power greater than yourself. You pray to that thing, you act in accordance with its wishes, essentially, and it grants you sobriety along with a host of other positive symptoms, like, just better mental health in general. He's not into that at all. He's a neuroscientist. So neuroscientists typically don't believe in higher power type shit. You leave that to the physicists or somebody else, the philosophers. Jack Panksepp was essentially, he identified the grief panic system. So the grief panic system generates the feelings of grief and panic. And essentially what it's for, it's a pro-social emotional generation system. It's supposed to basically get your mum. It's so that you feel, if you leave the sight of your child and your kids under 9 months old, the kids just automatically just start crying because they're very helpless. They can't really do anything by themselves or for themselves, so they need mom really, really badly. So basically, whenever mom's not there, the baby starts crying, and it's that feeling of grief and panic that they feel that induces that crying. So essentially, what the system is for is to alert your primary caregivers as to how much you need them, and then they come, and all babies do is cry, right? That's the one weapon they have at their disposal. But when they do cry, they get food, love, shelter, medical examinations, like all the things that they need, right? And so what happens, he says, like sometimes this system will stay on. Now, that's often a result of neglectful parenting, or sometimes it's a result of a health condition that the child's experiencing that the mother can't just solve readily. And so maybe the mother's doing everything she can to try and help this baby overcome, taking them to doctors and stuff like that. The baby, relatively speaking, does not know that it's being helped. So it's just like, something's wrong, I'm crying, mom's not doing anything about it. So there's various reasons why this grief panic system stays on. But people whose grief panic system stays on usually end up becoming opiate addicts. And we all know, if any of you guys are opiate addicts, I'm an opiate addict myself. Essentially, what opiate addicts are looking for is mom. They're looking for the safety and warmth of their mother. And, that's, when people smoke heroin or they inject heroin, it's like the warm blanket, lots of people like to call it. It makes you feel safe. Now, there's another system that he identified called the seeking system. And this system is like, the affect that it generates is kind of like excitement and enthusiasm. It's like the system that causes you to like experience like kind of like a zest for life, if you will, and you go out into the world and you generate new possibilities for survival. You network with your friends, you start businesses, you're very industrious, you're always going out there and looking for opportunities to enhance survival, I guess you could call it. And he says that if the seeking system is underactive, usually people will end up becoming crack, cocaine, meth guys, stimulant guys, roughly speaking, because that stimulates their seeking system. And you guys know the classic story. You take some meth and then you're taking apart a VCR for the rest of the night. Not that there's really a lot of VCRs around anymore, but so what Panksepp says is like, just because of the way that the AA is set up is, for the heroin guys, the fellowship of AA, the fact that you can go to like your home group and the same people are there as long as they haven't relapsed, and even if they have, they can always come back, and you kind of like develop a friend network, and like even your sponsor, and maybe if you're lucky enough to enjoy the privilege of being able to sponsor people one day, you have that like really strong social. Felt like me and Dylan met in recovery. Me and Dylan's cousin Julian met in recovery. Almost all my friends are in recovery, and we literally escaped the worst hellish type of life and we grew out of it together, and we like escaped disaster. We overcame addiction, and now we're all like kind of engaged in this effort to try and help other addicts recover. And that's like extreme. That's warm. I feel AA is like a safe place for me. I know what the people in AA are like. They know what I'm like. We're all roughly the same. We're all coming from the same place. We're all trying to overcome the same illness. And it's very good to suppress your grief panic system. And the thing about the grief panic system is, if it's on for too long, it starts suppressing other systems. And the two systems that it suppresses the most is the seeking system and the play system. So now you're like not playing anymore, and the joy just leaves your life incredibly fast. And again, this is the same with all drugs. Joy leaves your life pretty damn fast when you become addicted to hard drugs or alcohol. Jaak Panksepp also says that because there's a bit of a, and people in AA would probably deny, or 12-step fellowships in general would probably deny the existence of this, but there is a bit of a hierarchy within recovery communities. And there's people that are like, oh, this guy's a heavy hitter, or like, this guy runs the best big books. There is a little bit of like, I don't think humans can avoid stacking themselves into these like hierarchies. And it's like your spiritual growth is a never-ending goal. There's always something to be accomplished. There's always something you can do. You can you can learn more stuff. You can do different types of meditation. You can sponsor people. There's always room for improvement. So people who like a healthy seeking system, it tends to stimulate that seeking system within a safe environment. So for those reasons, Jaak Panksepp says that he likes AA the best. There's a psychiatrist that gives a statement in the back of the big book, actually, and basically she says like, as a psychiatrist, if I'm going to be confronted and I'm with an alcoholic and I'm tasked with treating an alcoholic, my number one job is to break down any internal resistance they have to doing the steps, because the steps are really good. And like I'm a big CBT fan, I really am, and I'm a big fan of like what is that one? Positive. I don't even remember what it is. It's Kazimir Dabrowski. It's positive disintegration, which is like you need to conceptualize your psychological structure, your belief system, your value system, what makes you mad, what doesn't make you mad, analyze it, destroy it, and a new healthier version can be built on top of the ashes. And he talks about overexcitabilities, and he does talk about a lot of symptoms that alcoholics have. I'm a fan of a very wide swath of different recovery programs, and I believe that there's Sadhguru's inner engineering, and he's a bit of a, he portrays himself to be a spiritual guru, but if you look into his history, he's actually a ruthless businessman, and he's not necessarily the spiritual guy that he portrays himself to be on stage when he's, in his I don't even know what you call what he's wearing, but his inner engineering is actually incredibly useful, and I like it. And his whole deal is like, He's like, you guys know how to use, you guys love your iPhones, you love your tablets, you love your computers. Some of you guys know how to like build houses and use all these gadgets, but then he always goes into his spiel, like, have you used this gadget? Have you even read the user's manual? And I think that a lot of it has to do with like, people don't know how they operate. Most people don't know what they're doing, even when they're doing it. They think they know what they're doing. We think we know the motivations behind our actions, but we really don't. And part of the solution to alcoholism and in any kind of therapeutic program ever, one of the main things you're supposed to do is identify the problem. Identify in AA you have steps 4, 5, 6, and 7 to basically identify how you think, why you think that way, and devise a way to no longer think like that. Because obviously thoughts translate themselves into behavior. Behavior is actually like an external expression of your thoughts, and then now you're manipulating the world and you're creating an environment for yourself, and now you're living in that environment, and the environment that we create for ourselves that we live in is not good. Not good at all, okay? There was no accident that all my friends were always shitty, okay? It wasn't their fault. Well, it's their fault for being shitty, but it's not their fault that I was hanging out with them. It was me. My environment is an expression of who I am on the inside. So if you know the way you think, then you know what parts of the environment you're manifesting for yourself. And I've built a world for myself that I was so maladapted to and was so shitty that I couldn't even stop myself from smoking heroin every day. That's a problem. That's a big problem. And so, some people might say, like, just a quick example of like, I guess layers of abstraction as to how we think and what we kind of need to get a handle on. I could come into this room and have a black eye. And you could be, Joey, what happened? And I could say, I got punched in my eye, which is true, right? That's an answer. It's not a super informative answer. It's not the best answer. It's true. And we could call that consequence. And then maybe somebody else comes in and they're like, hey, Joey, what happened to your eye? And I'd be like, I was lipping somebody off. That's also true. That also happened. And we could call that a behavior, right? And so then someone else could come in and say, hey, Joey, what happened to your eye? And I could be like, somebody thought they were tough. And maybe I'm talking to Dylan about this, and maybe Dylan knows me very well. And what that really means is someone was acting like they were tough, and then I had to start lipping them off. And what's that when I'm always acting tough and I want to be the toughest guy in the room? You could say that's false pride, which is a defect. So this is happening, this has happened, this has happened, and this has happened. All these things are just layers of abstraction. They're true. And then maybe you could say, Joey, what happened? And I could say something like this. This guy made a fool out of me, or someone was trying to make a fool out of me. Or maybe, I'm being honest and I'm being vulnerable. I'm like, I was embarrassed. I got embarrassed. And it's like, well, why does that? Well, it's like maybe I had a father, and maybe my father was an asshole, and maybe my father was a gruff tradesman, and maybe my father didn't talk about his feelings, and maybe he always used to tell me to stop being a bitch, stop being a girl, stop whining, you gotta be tough. Maybe that's it. Maybe my dad basically said, like, you're not a man. So what's that? That's my belief system. Defects are psychological tools that we use to protect ourselves against our negative core beliefs being confirmed. So if you want to start acting like you're better than me, I will show you that I'm better than you. Regardless of what's actually happened. Someone can just be staring at me and I could be triggered into that like you think you're better than me thing for no apparent reason at all. And then so we got to ask yourself, do you know what you're doing? Yeah, I'm showing this guy a lesson. It's like, no, you're reacting to your belief system. And then you got to ask, why do you have a belief system? What's the function of a belief system? Why do people even have one? And then you could say this. Biology. And why I have that belief that I'm not man enough, that's a very common belief. Beliefs are, there's not a huge, vast variety of beliefs that everyone, like, they're usually like, I'm not good enough. I will be rejected, I will fail, I will be abandoned, I'm not man enough, people don't love me, people don't care about me. Those are like the beliefs that almost every single person has. And so you got to ask, why is that? Well, then beliefs aren't arbitrary. I don't have a deep-seated belief that laminate is better than engineered laminate is better than vinyl flooring. Okay? Maybe I think that, but no one has a core belief that says that. Because core beliefs aren't arbitrary. They serve a function. They protect us. They allow us to facilitate our biological instincts. So someone might say, hey Joey, what happened to your eye? And I say, someone challenged my position on the socioeconomic status hierarchy. And like, what the fuck does that mean? It means that's how humans mate. So really what happened is, who teaches me how to mate and how to be good with chicks? Or who's supposed to? Dad. Dad's supposed to. He's supposed to teach me that. He's supposed to embody all the behaviors that would cause one to rise up the hierarchy. You want to?
I just got to grab my bag.
Yeah, go grab it. Yeah, of course. So again, just to illustrate, we don't really know what we're doing when we're doing it. We don't notice that we're doing that. Someone looks at me and I get scared and I feel threatened and I say this. Oh, he's threatening my position on the socioeconomic. People are like, what are you talking about? We don't necessarily exist on that plane, although all these things are true. And then maybe you might say, what's the most true? It's like, probably that one. Because that one's definitely the oldest, and it's definitely common amongst all life. Maybe not socioeconomic hierarchies, but procreation instinct is a fact of life. Even if you're asexual, you have the procreation instinct drives almost all of your behaviors, and the only ones it doesn't drive are the ones that survival instinct is responsible for. So it's like, what is the solution to alcoholism? Well, for me, I'm a big fan of information. You guys might be able to tell. I'm all about accurate information. So it's like, I need to know what I'm doing when I'm doing it. I'm driven by my biology has its own goals in mind. And when I'm driven by a biological instinct, it has its own goals, it has its own outlook, it has its own set of emotional framework. When I'm operating like this, different things make me mad and different thing makes me happy. When I'm doing that, all these things have their own motivational forces, and it's like, which part of me is currently inhabiting my physical body and making me do things? Do you know what I mean? And, Freud's deal was like, identify essentially these and these, but these. Freud's like, let's do psychoanalysis and we're going to find the events in your past that contribute to the behaviors that cause you to create that environment for yourself that you can't handle, and so you fucking use drugs about it, or you drink about it, or all forms of destructive behaviors. That's Freud's deal. The awareness of that will make it so plain to you what you're actually doing that when you're doing it, you notice yourself doing it and you're like, I can't rightfully do this anymore because it is causing my destruction. And over time, through a process of extinction, the fears that are kind of associated with these beliefs and the automatic mental reflexes that are associated with the beliefs will start to leave you as long as you keep this in consciousness. And that's a very valid approach. And psychoanalysis is awesome. And everybody likes it. CBT, not so much. CBT is like, you don't really need to dig into the past. And CBT works as well. CBT is like, your thinking is fucked. You think and act in stupid ways. Identify them and we'll develop skills for you to use to get rid of them in the moment. So that's more like, when you notice yourself acting like horribly, then, stop yourself. And the more you stop yourself, the more neuroplasticity will take a hold, becoming easier to stop it the next time. And then you'll just be like this, before you know it, you'll be this ultimate inhibition machine, and all your impulses, you can just be like, no, which is also awesome. You don't really need to dig into the past. Some people really don't like doing it. Now, if you really don't like doing it, I'm going to probably say you need to do it. Because I'm also a big fan of the answer to your problems is going to be found where you least want to look. The things that scare you the most are that's a big sign, holding a big neon sign. This way for the solution to your alcoholism. Because fear is the number one symptom. Fear, more than drug use by 1,000,000 times. Every mental health symptom, negative, you'll find fear at its root. And the ability to push through and overcome fear is the biggest gift that you will ever get in your life. Believe me, it's incredible. I was never able to do it before. I'm still not able to do it all the time now. But holy shit, when you do it, it's exhilarating. Exhilarating. And so then you got to ask yourself this, like, here's the thing, it's hard to do that. It's hard to voluntarily face your fears. You know? Actually, me and Dylan were climbing one time and we were learning how to sport climb. And when you sport climb, the rope is not at the top. There's anchor points. So you're here, climbing up to this next anchor point, but you're only tied into this anchor point. Here, with your rope. So if you slip, you don't just kind of, it's not like top roping, you don't just go down like a foot. You fall all the way down, and then plus the stretch of the rope. And so we're like, let's practice this inside, in a safe environment. So the rope was hooked up to my harness, and Dylan was belaying me. He's like, okay, jump. And I was like, okay. He's like, jump. And I was just like, okay. And I was like, it was like I was like electrically attached to this thing. I was like, and then I was like, okay, and I jumped. And as I jumped, I grabbed the wall again. And I went, and I slammed back into the wall. And fuck, you should have heard how hard he was laughing. He was laughing so hard, he probably missed himself a little bit. But it's like, that's a metaphor for my whole life. I can't let go because I need the safety bad. I need it. And if you've grown up with trauma, you want the safety more than anything. And it's precisely the extent to which you're willing to relinquish that safety that's how speedy your recovery is going to be. Your recovery actually depends on it, but also the speed in which you recover will depend upon the extent to which you're willing to let go and jump. So that's shitty. But the best part is, when you guys do it, you will discover parts of yourself that you didn't know existed. And you will be very, very strong, and you'll be very, very confident, and you'll be like, holy shit, this is awesome. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And so maybe something that we need to discuss really quickly before we have to go is the role that responsibility plays in all this. For me, I lack structure. And I spent my whole life doing everything I could to absolutely avoid any responsibility. I thought happiness was to be found in being released of every responsibility. I didn't even have a cell phone. Because you know what happens when people call you, right? They want something. Even if it's just to talk. Well, I don't want to talk. I'm an insecure heroin junkie. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to come into work on my day off. I don't want to talk to my mom because she's going to be questioning my life decisions. I don't want these creditors to be able to reach me. Like, I don't want any of that. And so I followed this all the way to its logical conclusion, which is 100% homelessness. I was homeless because of it. So it's like, woohoo, good job at avoiding responsibilities. Oh, I'm so happy now that I don't have any responsibilities. And the fucked up part is that it seems that meaning and purpose and becoming more than who you are is like a result, and it emerges from developing a life in which you're accountable to something. And so for me, letting go of my defense mechanisms is a moral responsibility. A moral responsibility for me. I just tapped my mic, that's probably not going to sound good. If I don't do that, what happens is that I let fear close me in, and I become irritable, and I become angry, and I become hurtful to other people, and then I wound people, and then I treat my girlfriend not very nicely, and then I even treat my friends not very nicely. Yeah.
So when you were in your addiction, were you aware of this fear of responsibility, or is that something that you learned afterwards? Like, did you always know that you didn't want to have any responsibility?
I knew that I didn't want to have responsibility, but I was a long way from admitting it was because I was scared.
Okay. Oh, okay.
You know? I thought that wasn't what life was about. I had a belief that life is about just having a good time. I looked at my parents, they wake up, they made us lunch, they drove us to school, they went to work, they picked us up from school, they dropped us back off, they made dinner, they cleaned up after dinner, they got ready for tomorrow, and if they were lucky, they might get in a TV show in or two before they would go to sleep. I didn't want that. That looked boring. I'm like, that's not a good life. I don't want to constantly spend 100% of my time doing work just so that everything doesn't fall apart. That's not me. I'm more of a hunter-gatherer. I had all these fancy, ways of describing what I was like. Yeah, I'm like you know that program like Alone in the Wild or Alone, and it was like that kid who went to Alaska. The kid who went to Alaska and ate those berries, and Into the wild, yeah. Not into the wilderness. That guy was awesome. That builder guy, but this other guy, he was like, a nonconformist. He didn't want to like follow society's rules because he was too cool. So he just actually left his family behind and went and ate berries and died. Super cool, right? Super flashy. Oh, that guy's awesome. It's like, no, how is that awesome? That's cowardice. And I was much the same. And I didn't know it was because of fear. I thought that I was cool and I was a nonconformist and people can't tell me what to do. And it was actually like, no, I was just scared. I suffered from Peter Pan syndrome. I did not want to grow up. So now, the stuff that I really don't want to do, that really uncomfortable stuff, when my girlfriend's upset at me about something random and she gets super annoying and it's like uncomfortable for me. And I want to shut her down and I want to hide from it. And I don't want to solve the problem. And it's like the more I do that, the more the problems build up and then the relationship just becomes absolutely horrible. And it's like, actually, maybe she is really annoying, but when she's upset about something, she's usually right about it. And it usually requires me to do something about it. And when I do it, it makes the relationship better. And then now the household is functioning properly. So I'm responsible to the relationship. It's not about what I want, it's not about what she wants. It's about what's best for the relationship. And if we both worship that ideal, metaphorically speaking, then it has a trickle-down effect. And life is the same. Now I do things that I don't want to do all the time. And any regular balanced person can tell you this when they're 15 years old. I do things I don't want to do all the time because it's good for me. Human beings are a bit weird. We're fighting our own biology. Evolution selects for traits that help us out now and fuck us over later. And our behaviors are a manifestation of those genes. We do what helps us right now at the expense of the future. But now, because of this world we've built for ourselves, we live a really long time. And that future that was never supposed to come because we should have been dead, killed by a wild animal or disease or old age, it's now like we're not even halfway through our lives anymore. And now we're living in that mess that we've created. And it's bad. So I think that the key to overcoming addiction, no matter if psychologically originated or you have biological factors, is taking responsibility for the way that your life is. If you guys have psychiatric and physical conditions that contribute to your addiction, eat good food, drink water, sleep. Why? Because you love broccoli? No, because if you don't, you're going to go into an episode and you're going to cause damage. And maybe you'll come down and you won't be manic or whatever, or depressed. But the damage that you did is going to cause psychological torture for you and you will get loaded. And so you have a moral responsibility to manage any kind of psychiatric or physical condition that you have. And if your addiction is psychologically more loaded, I guess you could call it, psychologically loaded rather than physically loaded, then it's your moral responsibility to seek out the motivations that drive you to the destructive behaviors that cause you to relapse and try and outroot them and then figure out the fear that's behind them and then confront that fear. Because if you guys want the princess, if you guys want the treasure, you got to slay the dragon. There's zero way around it. I've never seen anyone ever escape this reality. We don't make the rules. I don't know who does. People call it God. Evolution. I don't know. We are designed to fit a certain niche. And if we don't fit into that niche and we think we can operate outside of the system, I'm a human, I have a free spirit, I can think, I can make up my own rules. You can't. That's just not the way it works. And directly or indirectly, when you try and fuck with the structure of reality, it will get you. It will always get you. So the best antidote to all this chaos is truth. Truth is the best antidote. And the responsibility to face up to it and destroy that dragon. So that's it, guys. Thanks for coming. Hey, super tight.